always has been, and always will be. Like any other town, it changes just a little bit from time to time. So we're here to let you know some of the things that are going on in your town.
Hi there, I'm Shari Williams-Andrews, your host for This Week in Willits, where we always learn more about our town and its recent and upcoming events. The Willits Question guys were out on the streets again asking the public about the Seabiscuit Parkway issue. A good idea? Yay or nay? Come on, Andy, that's a goat. Watch this episode to find out what Willits residents think. Things really got rolling at the Grange with the well-sponsored Transportation Forum in June. If you want to find out about a possible recreation trail between Brook Trails and Willits, learn about Rails with Trails, or if you wanted to know what's happening with the Willits Bypass and other transportation improvements, be sure to check out this segment. And lastly, the highlights, sights, and sounds of the 2011 Willits 4th of July Parade. Stay tuned for a snippet of this year's parade, and keep an eye on our schedule for the full event screening. Now let's see what the residents have to say about Seabiscuit Parkway.
I think it would be a great idea. I think it'd be a great idea. I don't see why or how it would actually hurt. I can't see any negative out of it. I mean, sure, Commercial Street's been Commercial Street since I've been a kid, but I think that it would bring more of an attraction to our town. I mean, just having a street named after Seabiscuit and having it be Commercial Street, I think would be awesome, considering that the museum is right there on Commercial Street. So anyway, that's how I see it. And I actually haven't even heard about this until now. And I think it'd actually be kind of fun for Willits. You know, and that's my little 2 cents worth, and yeah.
My name is Lisa Gibney, and I think that putting the change of the names on Commercial Street is not a good idea. It's going to be a huge expense, and I think that it's not an expense the city needs, and I feel that it would not be a great idea. It would be expensive with changing the signs, and inconvenience for the people that live on Commercial Street, the businesses on Commercial Street, a lot of them, you know, decals on their cars and stuff. It just changes the whole atmosphere, and unless the city's gonna take care of all that, which is an expense, I don't think it should be done. The only benefit that I do see is more tourists coming along Commercial Street because of the name of Seabiscuit. I don't see it bringing in a whole lot of business. I see the confusion because Seabiscuit's not even on that road.
It does involve a lot of work to change your address, but I wish they would agree to it. I think it'd be great for the city. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Mark Rawich. I lived in Willits for almost 30 years. Came here as the director of the Mendocino County Museum, and now I'm the Dean of Instruction for the Mendocino College Willits Center. And I support the change of the name to Seabiscuit Parkway. I think it's a good idea for Willits. I think it celebrates Seabiscuit. The college actually, as an organization, is supportive of the change because we think it's kind of an inspiration to college students, the Seabiscuit story, and we think that having Seabiscuit Parkway grace that whole segment of property along Commercial Street, which I call a landscape of community values. I really appreciate that whole setting with the museum and the library, and the college is about to build a new facility there. So to join that neighborhood, we think that as long as the rest of the people along the street itself are supportive of the idea, that we think it's also a good idea. So thanks for the opportunity to comment.
I'm asked about the Willits changing the name of Commercial to Seabiscuit. I don't agree with that. I don't think this is the time in our economy to spend money on such as that. That's pretty much it. And I like Seabiscuit. That was the best book I ever read. And I love the movie, and I love everything about it. And I think it is a great attraction for people, but I don't think changing the name of the street's gonna bring anybody here or keep anybody from coming for that matter. So I just think it's a waste of money. Is that okay?
Seabiscuit Parkway, I think, is a silly idea. Because the only thing it does, I think it just actually confuses people, and commercial has been around for so doggone long. And I've only been in Willits 7 years. I know where commercial is. I just don't see the need for change right now on that. And it's going to cost so much money, and the street signs, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's going to cost too much money that could be put someplace else that this town really needs. I don't know how it would bring people in. Seabiscuit's been dead for a long time. I think it's a nice piece of history, but I don't see any reason to do the change that they want to do.
I can't see a guarantee that it would do anything, but I definitely know, I didn't even know that Seabiscuit was from around here until my boyfriend told me. So if more people saw it on a street sign, then maybe it would bring a little bit of, information, if not interest. So why not? It might cost money for street signs, but other than that, I don't understand why it would be such a big problem, so that's just what I think.
I'm Patricia Sprinkle, and I've lived around this area since about 1940. I don't think it's a very good idea, mostly because we're in bad economic times. Otherwise, if you had the money to do it, fine, but it costs a lot of money to change the name of the street. I don't think economically it's a good idea. It really isn't. They've got so many problems, and from what I understand, that Willits is broke anyway.
I grew up in Willits, and it's a good area to live. And to name it Seabiscuit, well, it doesn't sound like a bad idea, I kind of like that, because Seabiscuit was from here. Sounds like a good idea, but I'm not the only one who can say it, A lot of people have different opinions, and which is okay too, but I have no problem with it.
I think it's a bunch of to do about nothing. I don't think they should change it. I think they should actually just leave it Commercial Street. It's been Commercial Street for 100 years. It might as well be Commercial Street for another 100. What brings people to town is this highway right here, and hopefully pretty soon it'll go somewhere else.
Welcome to the Willits Economic Localization Transportation Forum. I'm really happy to have these guests, and I will introduce them but also tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Our main plan is to get short updates on a couple of things. So Bob Whitney is here to talk about the Willits Creek pathway, the trail that goes between Willits and Brook Trails, and some things that are afoot on that. I'm going to talk briefly about the Willits bypass. Mike is going to talk briefly about the Brook Trail second access. And Lisa, what's your last name? Mace. Lisa Mace and Larry Stropes are going to talk about rails with trails. Very specifically, we're currently not talking about taking out rails and putting in trails, but combining them together, which is what we're going to talk about today. There is so much else under the heading of transportation. Many of our rail experts weren't able to make it here today. There's a lot under this hat, so we're trying to fit a lot into one day or one afternoon. I'm hoping we can have a little best practices talk. I noticed a number of people biked here, which is perfect, and a number of you bike or have other forms of transportation in your everyday lives. So I think it would be really great to sort of share what works, what the good routes are, what doesn't work and what needs work, you know, what things that we could really be working on as a city. So I was going to talk briefly about the bypass, and I was thinking earlier today that I'm probably really not the best person to speak on the bypass, but I wanted to, as someone who's a bit involved in the goings-on with that project, I thought I'd tell a little bit about it. So I did go on the website, Caltrans website today, to make sure that there was anything that I wasn't up to date on, that I could be updated. And according to the website,
they're starting construction.
They're starting construction in the summer of 2010, and it will be complete in 2014.
They're starting
yes.
This spring they started, yeah.
Yes.
You just haven't noticed.
Right. So as you can see, that hasn't happened. Last year, the California Transportation Commission approved the approximate $197 million funding for the Willits Bypass project, but it was contingent on them receiving permits from the Army Corps of Engineers and I believe the Department of Fish and Games. It was basically, you can have this money if and when these permits are done, which I think was about I think they had a multiple month chance to fill that out. That also did not happen. The Army Corps was unwilling to issue the 404 permit, which is what the bypass was requiring in order to be funded in that cycle. So that funding is not current, you know, that's gone, that's moved on. So Caltrans is still moving ahead. They're now saying, and you were at that grazing meeting, I think they're now saying that they're doing just the 2-lane, or there's a number of things in flux. There's also a number of issues that have been brought up about the property that Caltrans had set aside for mitigation and what can be done with that, whether it can be grazed or not grazed. You may have heard some things in the paper recently about that. One of the issues that's going on with the bypass is the relinquishment of Main Street. If the bypass continued the way it is planning on being done, and if it in fact bypasses the city of Willits, then the area from Highway 20 north would be relinquished to the city of Willits. It would become the property of the city of Willits. There is a ton of problems with that, but some of the issues that we're dealing with are the state of the current road, the state of repair of the current road, issues about what a reasonable state of repair, I see Dave Madrigal over there, he can correct me, I think that's the reasonable good repair. State of good repair is the rules in which Caltrans would need to give this to us. We have concerns, the city has concerns about the cost of taking on this section of roadway, especially in the state that it's in, but also, and this is something that kind of relates to all of you guys, also there is issues about what we want that downtown corridor to look like and who's going to be planning and basically doing that design. Mayor Bruce Burton and Councilmember Hanson have been meeting in an ad hoc committee with Caltrans. I've requested that they tell us what it is that they've been working on. One option is that Caltrans could just give us a big bunch of money and we could implement the design that we want, which that would in theory be good to plan it out and have a vision for what we would like. The other option is that the city could require that Caltrans do it, and Caltrans would bring the road up to whatever state of repair that they want.
My name is Larry Strobes. I'm a retired advertising executive from the Bay Area. My wife and I moved up here on 9/11, so I don't know what that tells you. Shortly thereafter, I got involved in Willits Rotary, and starting in July, I'll be the president. We've really gotten excited about the idea of helping the city develop multi-use trails and maintain them perhaps even after that. One of the things that I've come across in my reading is that governmental and business groups all say that if the public-private sectors work closely together, more things happen, and things happen for the better. So our community, the city of Willits, has already approved the plan, as probably most of you all know, for multi-use trails. But unfortunately, they have no funding for it right now. I have met with the city manager and the, whatever Alan Valeri's title is, I can't keep track of it. But you know, their emphasis is more on curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and maybe many of you support that. But that's not really very exciting, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. They are necessary, of course. But a multi-use trail, I think, involves vision. It gets you excited. It gets people excited. The reason I got involved in this in the first place is I read about a Rotary Club in southwestern Scotland, which almost single-handedly built a 100-mile multi-use trail along the southwest Scottish coast. We see and again, I think it's really good that Holly mentioned that we're talking about rails with trails. We see a group starting with Willits Healthy Action Team and perhaps Willits Rotary, and there's many other groups and individuals we can bring into the party, setting up just that, a coalition to work on multi-use trails. I'll just give you a little quick background. I come from Marin County, and for many years, as many of you probably know, the anti-railroad people in Marin really had the upper hand. They did signs that said, "Stop the stinker," and all that kind of stuff. And then the people who supported the railroad decided it was time to, or learned it was important to build coalitions. So they got the Sierra Club, and they got walkers, and they got bikers, and they got people who walk dogs. And by the time they finished, they had a huge coalition, and they finally passed it. I'm hoping that we can do something similar to that here in Willits. The scope of our work, our initial objective is really to get something built. Healdsburg has a very successful multi-use trail program. You probably all know that Ukiah was just awarded $750,000 by Caltrans to do only 3/4 of a mile.
Oh.
And that may sound kind of silly for a multi-use trail, but I think the Healdsburg experience was that once you get something going, it tends to expand. Healdsburg, I think, started with a mile or two, and now they're going to go from Simi Winery all the way over to the Russian River. But at least we have city council approval, and I think one of the things that we can bring to the party as Rotary is we're pretty good at fundraising. And we mentioned this to Paul and to Alan at an early meeting, and we said, but we're not used to raising the kind of money that would be required, like $750,000. But they said, it doesn't matter. Anything you raise will be helpful. Not only that, we can probably get matching grants. We can demonstrate to other bodies that we have community support. So anything. But we need help. We need people who are interested and enthusiastic. And we've told people this all along. We would like to be able to call you or email you and say, hey, we're going to have a meeting. Can you come and help us? And, you know, like I say, we're still in the gestation stage. But a lot has been done. You all probably know that the Mendocino Council of Governments, MCOG, has a $90,000 grant to plan multi-use trails starting in Hopland, ending in Willits, but they're going to focus on the downtown areas first because they know that's where the people are and that's where the usage is going to go. And again, once you get started, they tend to expand almost on their own accord.
And go ahead.
Can you just describe what is a multi-use trail exactly? What, I don't believe.
Oh, okay, that's a very good question. A multi-use trail has to be designed for more than one usage. It can't just be a bike trail. It can't just be a hiking trail. It varies in different parts of the country. In some parts of the country, there are actually horses allowed on these multi-use trails. But the idea is, you know, maybe a 10 to 12 foot wide trail, and sometimes they have like running paths on either side so joggers don't have to run on pavement.
And they can also be used as connection hubs. Like, so if we did develop a trail between here and Ukiah, it would both be, you know, you could recreate on a certain distance of it, but then some people in theory could commute, or they could, right, or
yeah, okay.
Or it's also could be a tourist. It could be a tourist attraction also because people travel to go. I make it a point to go visit places where I actually, Gabe and I have taken our bikes over to the coast so that we can ride on the Hall Road, and when we go over there, it certainly increases economic vitality as well.
I promise this will be the last point, but I think this is important. One of the problems that many people have had in Healdsburg and Ukiah to some lesser extent is, gee, we get the thing built and then how do we maintain it? You know, does the city have to pay all this money to maintain it? Well, at this board meeting where we first talked about, our Rotary board meeting where we first talked about this multi-use trail thing, one of our new board members likely is Tom Ullman. And he raised his hand and he says, you know what, I could probably provide prison labor to help maintain this trail. If you guys get it going, you guys get it built.
On that note, there's going to be a lot more prisoners soon. The state's sending them here. I'm Bob Whitney, and I'm a trail advocate. One idea on funding, and the city's always saying, well, let's get rid of the parks, we can't afford this and that. It's been like that for 30-some years that I've lived here. And it's just a natural tendency, and I don't blame them, and it's the same in Brook Trails where I live, is that the focus is on water, sewer, roads, police, you know, the fundamentals, right? And especially in the downturn of an economy, you don't want your parks like the state's trying to get rid of all the park. You don't want that to happen. So one idea that Holly has and others for many years, it's been kind of floating around, is to form a Little Lake recreation district. It's a special district, and then we'd be taxed to support recreation, trails, etc. I represent the Golden State Land Conservancy. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. We're subsidizing the project for the Willits Creek Pathway right now, but we can't afford to sustain it forever. Let me just explain the Willits Creek Pathway first. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a trail that was open to the public between Willits and Brook Trails, and it went along the what's called Mill Creek. That's a path all the way, believe it or not, there's a path through the golf course, comes all the way down through the community center. It goes down in front of the lodge, goes past through the parking lot there, and down through what's called the park course. There used to be a gate that you could go through that was opened by the property owners. It's the Smith Ranch, and you used to be able to walk all the way to Willits, and people from Willits used to be able to walk or ride their bikes all the way up or ride their horses or whatever. But because of vandalism and people spending the night down there and drinking and partying and whatever, you know, setting up camp, they were actually living up there for a time, the Smiths said, hey, this is enough, we can't police this. It's getting out of control. It's a fire hazard, a health hazard. So they shut it down, and it's been closed ever since, I think, the late 90s. A lot of us have always wanted that to open up, but in a responsible way. And you need security, you need management, and so what we did, the Golden State Land Conservancy, we purchased 2 of the properties. They were both owned by the same landowner. We purchased those about 2 months ago, and along the path, one is 21 acres, the other is just a little city lot, and the 21 acres is in the county, and there's 2 other landowners that hopefully will let us continue to use that pathway in the long term. But right now we're managing the what we call kind of trail by appointment, so that we can have outings there, we can have outdoor education, we can have activities. We can't open it up without working with the other 2 landowners to make sure that what they experienced in the past doesn't happen again.
One of the things that we think is really important is this Willits Creek Trail. I think eventually free public access is the goal. The question is how to get there. So we put $1,000 into the exploration of this meeting with a property negotiator and with Bob with the Lands Conservancy, and so it's progressed a great deal since then. But the vandalism and the access is one of the most challenging things to sort of get around.
There's a video and a brochure on the Willits Creek Pathway. Thank you, David, on the website.
Great. It looks great. Check that
There's
out.
a few really nice shots of David.
Brook Trails has 10 to 12 miles of hiking trails, and here's an opportunity where you could connect 2 communities. You could have 10, 12,000 people to be able, for example, you could bicycle all the way up through Falcon Court up into Spring Creek and make a circle around. There's just any number of places that this trail would help. It would also help the cross-country track team, who historically, as I understand from Bob, used to run up to the park course and do their laps. And obviously everybody that's been up Sherwood Roads knows how dangerous that road is. And I was telling Bob 3 or 4 years ago, I saw a young boy, 8 or 9 years old, on a bicycle with a bat over his shoulder, and he's wobbling along, all this traffic going around him 30 miles an hour. And that's a disaster waiting to happen when you have basically a railroad grade. I mean, this trail has been very important to our board, but obviously we're dealing with private owners, if you will. And I even announced 7 or 8 years ago in a public meeting that we do parks as one of our powers besides water, sewer, and fire. And this was in front of my board. We would take one of our employees every Monday morning to make sure that we take a trip down this trail just to clean up the litter. Just because this trail is so important to brook trails, I can't think of a more important trail than this connection right here, because now you can get to Willits and now you can connect off. I mean, it just opens up both communities. So it's extremely important. Just to give you a really quick update on the Brook Trails second access, every year we have a goals and objective meeting, and for the last several years, this has been our #1 goal and our #1 objective. It's greater than water. And we're basically turning from public health hats to public safety. Road, you have basically 9,000 cars on average going up that road a day. It's designed for 2,500 according to Phil Dow with MCOG. It doesn't meet any standards at all. It's obviously an accident waiting to happen. Every time we have the first rains in November, there will at least be 2 to 3 vehicles going off that road because it's slick from the oil buildup for the first, through the summertime. So it's all obviously a very important issue, and there's two uses for our board. One is that we need use out of a road, and we obviously need it for emergency purposes, because obviously we have 16 square miles up there. There's 600,000 trees. We know that we're in a forested environment. We currently there was a study done in 2009 by KOA engineers. Basically, that was a $150,000 study on the feasibility of the second access. Currently, there's a $459,000 supplemental study happening as we speak. And again, they're looking at 6 different routes, all the way from one of the routes that goes over to the KOA campground off of Highway 20 to the Furco Road, which is hard to explain, but it's behind the Padula Ranch, it's behind the airport. These roads vary in length anywhere from 2 miles to basically a little over 4 miles. Costs a couple of years ago varied from $14 million to $28 million. The key is the Willits 101. I mean, obviously there has to be that has to happen first.
Another thing, talking about back to downtown, many of you may have noticed the improvements that have been done on West Commercial Street with that project. It's certainly raised controversy. I'll put it that way. Some people love the improvements. Some people hate them. Many people dislike the fact that there's no longer that right turn if you're going north. What is sort of highlighted is the fact that that's actually an illegal right turn. It wasn't actually ever a lane right there.
You mean if you're going south?
If you're on West Commercial and wanting to turn south, excuse me. We used to sort of be able to go up the side and turn. Once we put the planters in there, you can't do that, which frustrates a lot of people, but the fact is that it's a lot safer because people who are walking aren't getting turned into. It doesn't solve the problems with people coming from Commercial past the Noyo, driving past the Noyo and turning left that's really a dangerous corner right there, because the light tells you to walk when the light is telling people to turn left across traffic. Roy, I noticed you're here. Maybe you could talk a bit about the Main Street group and what you guys decided.
It's been inactive after that was voted down, that proposal to have better pedestrian access and planters on the street in that little half block there.
And so this is a block between Commercial Street and...
Mendocino and...
Van Lane.
Van Lane. Just that little... What we were trying to do was to just take this little section and try to do something that we would like to expand to the entire Main Street. But, and there was money in the budget to study it and get a price on how much it would cost to do these improvements. And there was money there was I can't remember the funding source, but there was a funding source besides the city to pay for that. And it was voted down by the city council. There was just no interest by the majority to look into it, which some of us felt was short-sighted, because in these relinquishment negotiations, we could have said, listen, it's going to cost this much to do this section. You could multiply that by the whole section, and that's how much we want from Caltrans, so that we have a really great Main Street. But anyway, it didn't go anywhere, and it was disheartening. And there are people doing miscellaneous things on the Main Street Committee, but the committee itself hasn't really met formally.
Right.
So there are numerous instances where we can document places like Drapery Lane, like Blosser Lane. They have, historically, the Willits Unified School District had a non-crossing guard. What that means is the kids that come up the intersection, the crossing guard would say, you can't cross it.
You have to go down.
You have to go down way about a mile out of your way to cross at a controlled intersection, which is a Highway 20 signal intersection. Cross over, get on the other side of Highway 20, walk up wherever you want to walk, Franklin or Walnut or wherever, to get to Blosser Lane.
Oh, yeah. The city is moving forward with rebuilding the Railroad Avenue Bridge. That's going on this construction season, which is a key sort of hold up to any sort of connection through. A road would need to be continued between Railroad and Shell Lane, or Railroad and Bechtel Road, in order for it to actually help relieve any of the congestion. But one of the things that we had discussed in that plan, and one of the topics that's sort of appropriate for today, is that one of the options was to trying to get a trail behind, so basically on the other side of the creek from Burger King.
Reminder to everybody and anyone else who knows, biking or walking where there aren't any vehicles anywhere around is, especially in the evening, to wear something really light or
wear white at night.
White or one of those yellow fluorescent things. I mean, as a biker, you can put on a vest over whatever else you're wearing. I see so many people out in dark clothing, especially in winter when it's dark more, and they are practically invisible. And
I want to reinforce something that Holly said about contacting your city council people. Sometimes we tend to believe, because we hear Holly, she's ours here, and we think, oh well, Holly will take care of it. Well, honey, Holly can't take care of it. She's got one vote. So we need to make sure, if we feel strongly about something, that we voice our opinions to all of our council people, or if we're in Brook Trails, to our association there, because otherwise she can't just take all of what we think, oh, this is what they think. Well, yeah, that's great. She's got one vote there. So we need to make sure that our voices are heard with our other council people.
Ben, you move all around town on that Segway. So what do you think is, what's wonderful about it and what's challenging about it?
It's almost exactly like being on a bike. But the bicycles have advantages and disadvantages, just like the Segway has advantages and disadvantages. Okay. You're not required to wear a helmet on a Segway, but I always recommend it for other people. And the one thing I found is people are always giving me dirty looks when I'm on a Segway, but they're on a bicycle. Now, not everybody does that. There's been a few people, and that's because I'm on the sidewalk. I'm not out in the street.
Right.
And that's the thing about Segways. People don't understand. There are separate laws the state of California created for Segways, because Segways are supposed to replace gas vehicles in short-range trips inside town. So that way you don't have to have a gas-powered vehicle spewing out exhaust in a short distance. According to state of California vehicle codes,
which is section 313, a Segway can go on the sidewalk, in the bicycle lanes, and on the street.
I wasn't able to get anyone to come from MTA, the Mendocino Transit Authority, but do you take your Segway on the bus?
I can take my Segway on one bus, and that is the coast bus that goes from Fort Bragg.
Understanding is that they continually are reducing services, and that was my experience when I was on the MTA board. Does anyone commute by horse? I just want to put that out there. I am a big fan of horses going in town. My husband, it drives him nuts when people don't clean up after their horses, especially on the sidewalk, which happens a lot. But if I ever have a cafe downtown, you're going to get a discount if you ride your horse.
Shari, goodbye until next time.
So that's about it for now. Things are happening in Willits, as they always are, and things are changing, as they always do. Yet it's still the same familiar hometown we've all come to know and appreciate for what it is. We'd like to know what's happening with you, with your families, and the organizations which would not exist without your efforts and support. So give us a call at 459-2528 and let us know what's going on with you. Maybe you'll be a part of our next story. Keep tuned and join us next time to see what's happening this week in Willits.